One of the reasons I post other people's video on this platform too is for us to have different views on a particular issue. Of course, I'm a very big fan of Thomas Partey, but there is something this guy said about Thomas Partey. Almost everything he said about Thomas Partey is true. But there is something I disagree with him where he said that it is wise for Arsenal to replace Thomas Partey with Norgaard. Then after 1 year, then Arsenal can get a DM better than Norgaard. Reason is that Thomas Partey is earning high wage. But when you compare the amount Arsenal signed Norgaard, about £10 million, then compare it to the salary of Thomas Partey, I think it is not a wise business. He's saying this because of Thomas Partey injury. There is no guarantee that Thomas Partey will be fit throughout the season. But also, you need to understand that injury is not inevitable. Injury is something that you can't control. There is a possibility that Zubimendi will come to Arsenal. Even in his first game, he will be out of the season. Of course, it happened to Julian Timber. Then, when that situation comes, that means Arsenal will play with Norgaard as a defensive midfield throughout the season. Then, if he's not doing well, that means Arsenal have to bring Declan Rice back to number 6. Then, if it happens that way, it will affect Arsenal negatively. It is an interesting video. Just watch this video.
And so Arsenal have, for all intents and purposes, completed the deal of Christian Norgaard, the captain of Brentford, for a sum total of about 10 rising to 5 million, so basically 15 million pounds for Brentford's captain, and he's ostensibly Thomas Partey's replacement. Now the question is this a good or a bad deal? I don't really understand why this deal is having so much talk and so much online. This is something that we should talk about for a sum total of 30 seconds. It is not something that requires a deep dive, but I'll give a deep dive since that's what so many people just seem to be going on about. Now let's follow it from the beginning. Now Arsenal moved into last season with Partey and Jorginho being our DM depth profile. Now I was very clear on this channel, I was not a fan of that. I felt both of them needed improving on. To which Arsenal went out and got Martin Zubimendi, one of the most sought after number 6s in the world. Badly wanted by Liverpool, badly wanted by Real Madrid, badly wanted by so many teams, but we were able to get him. Now, newsflash, Arsenal were not going to go out and get this 65 million euros winning player to come and sit on the bench. If they were buying him, is because they wanted him to be the new starter. So, and I bring that up because there's been a question of who is replacing who. Is Zubimendi replacing Jorginho, or is Zubimendi replacing Partey? So is Norgaard replacing Partey, or is Norgaard replacing Jorginho? Zubimendi is replacing Partey as Arsenal starting 6. The question then is, that would have moved Partey to the number 6 role to the bench role if we had renewed his contract, correct? So should Arsenal renew Thomas Partey? For me, that question is a coin flip. I am not a fan of Thomas Partey for a variety of reasons. I feel like Partey is one of those players that is better in concept than in reality. I will always say it. The best ability is not your football, it's not your running, it's not the best ability is your availability. This is Partey when he was signed. 21 games missed, 20 games missed, 6 games missed, 36 games missed. And then in the last year when he's fighting for contract, 5 games missed. Do the math. This guy missed 88 games through injury. That is like 35% of the games he missed through injury. He is just not an available player. Now, before we even get into the availability, beyond that, yes, Partey is a guy who is very strong. He's kind of losing his pace, and he has started getting killed in transition a lot. And he's decent on the ball, and he can also shoot. But even in those things, even in his strengths, he started to get unreliable, because his unreliability is not just in his games missed. He has started making some kind of foolish mistakes. Last season, just go and look at how many mistakes he made leading to goal. But beyond those mistakes leading to goal, there was nothing worse than that stupidness of getting suspended for that first leg of that PSG first leg. Like, my brain cannot get rid of that. And apart from missing that first leg, he then came in the second leg and costed us 2 goals. I say all of that because I personally am not going to miss Partey, and that's before we get into the whole off the field thing. Now, what I want is a Partey replacement that is super, so like a Baleba or just somebody that's of a high level. That's what you want. Now, here is where this season and the bigger picture comes in. The question is, would it make sense to you if you've already spent 50 million on Zubimendi to go and spend another 50-60 million on another DM when there's still all those other positions to solve? That wouldn't just make corporate or financial sense. So if I'm able to get a replacement for for Partey in Norgaard, and I'm able to get a replacement for Neto in Kepa, and those two deals combined, I spend less than £20 million. That is good. The question then is the distance between Partey and Norgaard as a backup. I don't think it's a lot, and let me show you. Now, Norgaard is more of a traditional destroyer. He destroys things in front of the line. He just stops things from going in. He's the type of player you bring on when you're winning 1-0 and you need to see the game out. He comes and joins whoever is the GM on the pitch to see the game out. That's the kind of player he is. Almost like a slightly better version of like an El Neni or like a Ugarte or an Endo. You know, most teams have at least that one guy that he's just there to try and destroy things. That's kind of what his game is. But because we are Arsenal and a team that is in possession a lot of the time, you also want the person to be good or nice on the ball, right? Now, he is not as good as Zubimendi or Partey on the ball. But the question is he terrible? Now, it's sometimes hard to look at stats because stats are context specific. That's why I don't like when people just look at stats and nothing else. You need to think, how is this going to be affected by the type of team that this person is playing in? So he's playing in Brentford. Brentford play a more direct style, number one, and they play with less possession, number two. So he might not have the kind of passing stats you would want in your number 6 ipso facto. But let's look at Christian Norgaard and Thomas Partey. Now, I think everybody will agree that Thomas Partey is a better player than Christian Norgaard. However, how bad is it on the ball? So I've purposely not looked at any of the defensive stats. Number one, Norgaard is obviously better than Partey in terms of just like breaking things down, because that's just what he does. But number two, he's played in Brentford, a team that is more under pressure, that is less with the ball. So just by normal sense, his own counting stats for interceptions and blocks and clearances, they're always going to be higher. So there's not much use in looking at those. But let's look at the in possession stats and see, is there that much of a gap between Partey and Norgaard? This is per 90 to just make it simple. All right, basically the same. All right, chances created, basically the same. Now we get to passes attempted. Now, like I said, he's played in a less possession heavy team. He's playing in a more possession heavy team. That's why he attempts about 44 passes a game. He attempts about 15 passes a game. So that just tells us who is passing more per game, right? However, it doesn't necessarily talk to the quality of the passing. That's why we get into the next stats. His pass accuracy is 82%. His is 88%. Now, his is better, but that's not like, oh, I'm on another level, I'm on another planet from you. You know, it's good enough. You know, long pass accuracy, 53%, 55%. Again, his is better, but 2%, it's not like I'm in another planet from you. Crosses attempted, they're basically about the same. Cross accuracy 29, 16 is actually much better. But then the interesting thing I wanted to show you guys is the forward passes, because that's often the critique, in that especially DMs that are not good, they're only just going to be passing sideways or passing backwards. Look at their forward passes. Partey 15.9 and Norgaard 15.7. That tells me, and I've watched some of his compilations, I've watched him play, obviously. He's not a terrible player. So is this a good or a bad signing? My answer is neither. It's a sensible signing. It's we would have liked to keep Partey, but he's asking for more money, which for me is just even madness. Let him go. We'll sign a very, very cheap replacement so that we can keep the powder dry for the main areas where we need to spend a lot of money. So this is where we know whether this is a good signing or not. If we get a Norgaard, no problem. So long as you finish the window with Rodrigo, Sesko, Morgan Rogers, something crazy like that, then we know that, yeah, that's what we needed to save the money for, and that's what makes sense. And the next season, we can go and look for a more younger, versatile DM like an Agume or a Baleba or Boadidi or whatever. So it's a very obvious thing that they've done. I don't see why anybody's losing their heads over it. Let me know what you guys think, or if there's something else you want me to talk